I want to talk about one experiment that we are running currently in Bubble. Have you used Lambda? How, how many of you are being used Lambda already? Not so many. Okay. And React isomorphic or universal, server-side rendering. Whoa. Okay. So this is the experiment that we want to run. We won't run it live. We are currently doing in Bubble. So what we want to have is a dynamic web application that can be indexed, not like an SPA. So we want to just when you get the URL, you get the HTML. Boom, done. And we want to serve dynamic. We don't want to use static. We want to make it dynamic to provide some dynamic content based on the customer, whatever. So the other thing that we want to do is use Redux, of course, and keep the URL in sync automatically between the browser and the state. So when we change the URL, the state changes automatically, and we change the state, the URL changes automatically, and we keep the URL in sync and keep the page localized. So yeah, this is an experiment. I'm not saying that we have to do, everybody has to do this. This is the right way to do it. No, not that. So the challenges. So basically, what we have to do is use, for example, in the Amazon infrastructure, use the route 53 to route or request from the DNS entry to our API gateway. That is the second step there. And then we get a request, basically an event, in our Lambda function, because Lambda function receives events. So then we have to run a node server there to serve a node application to serve our pages. So now we have a new intermediary. So before we have a node application running on a Linux stacks or Docker or Doku, whatever. Now we have the API gateway in between, and we have the Lambda function in between. So when the user lands into a nice domain, we got a request into this endpoint with an ugly URL, whatever, and we got a nice surprise to path prefix that is the stage of the API gateway there. But also we want to run it locally. So this is kind of tricky because the environment of running in Lambda will differ a little bit of our local environment, but we want to get our code locally and working the same in production. So there's some tricks that we can do there to simulate the environment that we have an API gateway. It could be a kind of HTTP proxy, run another node application, simulate API gateway, and just transform the request into the similar request so we have the same code base. So basically, the API gateway allows us to configure how we want to handle the request that it receives. We can add resources, and we have this magic resource name that is Proxy Plus that will send everything down there to our Lambda function. So basically, a sample structure of the API gateway could be something like this. So we have the locale as parameter in the path. Then we have the proxy, and we get everything from there into our function. But in our function, we receive events, not HTTP requests. But the proxy integration of Amazon, what does is put all the requests into the event. So we got the request somehow, but the node server won't understand this, okay? So here you can see the details of the request. Basically, you have the headers, and these are the things that we get from the API gateway as an extra thing that we got the proxies. This is the request that we get, the path, and the parameter on the path. So for those that never access to Lambda functions, so happily they updated the UI 2 days ago. But it's not friendly. So if you see it, what I would do there? Basically, how to deploy in Lambda is you have to zip a file and upload there. Yeah, that way. So basically, what we will need to get our node application, serving React or serving whatever we want there, is to put something on the middle, kind of something on the front, on the function, that will transform this event request to an HTTP request. So basically, there's a repository here in AWS Labs that provides this code. And this is the most important part of the code. So basically, this is the entry point of the function, of the function. So we receive the server, event, and context. And basically, what we do is, if the server is already listening, we forward to the node server. If not, we start the server and then forward to the server, basically. But this is the basic trick. Basically, this forward to node server, what it does internally is transform this request that I showed before, the request inside the event JSON that I showed you, into an HTTP request, putting the headers on the place, putting the body, do some encoding, etc. So basically, this is how it looks like. So we receive the Lambda event with this function as a serverless. We transform the request and send it to the node application when we do rendering React. And then we receive the response from the server. We transform again and send to the Lambda as a response. So we want to serve the server a universal app that means render on the server and on the client. So we want to try this Redux first router that what it does is what I said before. The URL of the application is connected directly to the state. So if we change the state that points to the location, it will change automatically the URL, even with the query string. So we don't have to worry about all the tracing and updating the URL when the state changes and we want the user access to our page in that point that the user reached at some point of time. Of course, this has Redux there, because I was talking about the state that is Redux. So basically, here's how this will work. Basically, the URL goes to actions, and the actions update the state, and then the actions update the URL, basically. So, but also, we have a lot of things around that we have to deal with, because to deploy this application, we use some tooling. We are not using the serverless framework. We are using our Travis CI. We are using our own deploy application. We have a lot of tooling around that we have to integrate. So well, we need Webpack to do the bundle to upload the zip file at the end. But Travis will do that. So at the end, what we are doing is just adding layers and layers and layers and layers. Like, for me, in my learning of development all the time, we just add layers all the time. So this is like a lasagna of development, but it will work. So final thoughts about this experiment that we have right now is debugging in Lambda is not easy. The logs in CloudWatch are not friendly at all, because when you have some hits, when you are testing some requests, that's fine. But we have thousands of requests, to trace them inside the CloudWatch log is not easy. So we have to be aware of that. Webpack building sometimes is tricky. It's not something like friendly. Redux first router Rudy, that is the version that we are playing with, is under development. It's not released yet. Having your in sync with the state is really nice. And we experienced some bugs with the API gateway in Amazon. So sometimes we were like, what doesn't work? And we were thinking that we were failing, and we didn't fail. There was a bug. And this provided us a better control of infrastructure and scaling because we're using Terraform as like infrastructure as code. So that's why we are not using serverless framework that do all the deploy to Lambda automatically. So yes, I'm Pedro Visintin from Babel. Thank you. Thanks for to these people.